Okay, good morning, good afternoon, dear colleagues. We're here live from Moscow, the headquarters of Sputnik International News Agency and Radio and Россия Сегодня Media Group. And since we're all online, I give floor to Mrs. Dycheva, who is the head person really here today during this event. Well, and basically the whole SputnikPro program in India. Mrs. Dycheva, I give the introduction to you.
Yes. So greetings from Delhi, my dear friends, because I'm here in Delhi. So I'm going to be moderator of our today's workshop. So just a few greetings to Professor Saxena, to Professor Bala, to my dear old friend, Professor Vishal Sahai, whom I know for several years, and dear students, dear my colleagues in Moscow. So I'm moderator, that's why I must just introduce myself. I'm Olga Dycheva. In Moscow, I was working like professor at Moscow State University of International Relations. So I'm your colleague. Yes, here in India, I am for this time for 12 years. You see, totally 20 years. That's why, as I'm saying, I am 1/3 Indian, because the third part of my life I spent here in India. And in India, I was working first working with the website Russia Beyond the Headlines, then roughly the daughter of RT TV channel. And since 2017, I'm the head of Sputnik News Agency here in India. Just let me tell you, because today, honestly speaking, I can't say that I'm nervous, but anyway, it's our first meeting. And you see, I hope that everything must go fine. But just a few words, not taking bread from our main speakers. What is Sputnik News Agency? We are a rather new news agency. Sputnik News Agency was created 7-8 years ago. We are part of very big media group Россия сегодня. It's Russia Today, but don't be mistaken. We are not TV channel. We are not RT. We are media group Россия сегодня, Russia Today. We are part of this media group. And just a few words. We are modern news agency. Our products include news feeds, website, social networks, mobile apps, radio, broadcast, and multimedia press centers. Our headquarters in Moscow. We are very big multimedia center in Moscow. By the way, here in my office, I also have at the second floor very good multimedia whole center. And I hope that one day when we avoid all these restrictions, let's say, thanks God, COVID one day must leave us, then we'll meet here in our office, which is located at near Connaught Place, Parkwandas Road, in the center of Delhi. Okay, let's continue my small introduction of Sputnik. So regional office, headquarters in Moscow, regional office, as you see here in Delhi, in Washington, D.C., in China, in Beijing, in Vietnam, in Germany, Egypt, France. We are covering global political and economic news, targeting an international audience. What here with me in this office in India, 10 Indian journalists are working, and we are covering under the angle what could be interesting for international auditorium, the events which are taking place here in India. We have a Sputnik Newswire. We are a website, But apart from that, we have Sputnik Newswire and Radio Sputnik. And we have very big database of photos. And even our media group, we are organizer of very important photo contest under the name of our colleague Senin, who was killed when he was on duty at battlefield. But about this is for our future, yes, discussions. So this is small introduction. Because no, I am the host, you see, so let me, and this our first meeting, let me introduce my dear colleagues in Moscow. I'm going to introduce you to our Indian colleagues. Professor Saxena, let's ladies first. Ladies first. So first, Professor Sushmita Bala, head of media school. Dr. Bala is a teacher and trainer equipped with rich experience in media industry and academics for more than 3 decades. She has been a jury of radio awards and also been a member of nomination jury in International Science Film Festival organized by Government of India. She has presented more than 20 papers in national international conference. Oh my God, and she has 12 books to her credit. So, Dr. Sushmita Bala, I'm very glad to meet you and that hope that one day we'll meet face to face, you see, physically. Professor Amrish Saxena, Dean, Media School. Professor Saxena is a media professional, educator, researcher, broadcaster, filmmaker, political analyst. He has an experience of working in print and digital media, radio, TV, and films. He also holds the post of Vice President of Global Media Education Council and a member of International Association of Media and Communication Research. He has presented more than 50 papers in national international conferences. He is associated with 20 universities. Dear students, you must be very proud to have such professors. You see, that's why let me just tell you a few words. So we are Sputnik News Agency, but we created project which we call SputnikPro. What does it mean? So we are working with universities all over the world. We are working with Russian universities. We are working not only with students, but we are working with journalists from different medias. Why, you can ask me, why it's necessary for news agency? First of all, I think it's interesting for you, because for professors and of course for students, because not living Delhi, not living India, Indian students obtain opportunity just to have some training, to understand how international agencies working, you see, abroad. And it's help to exchange our multiculturalism in one word. You can ask why it's interesting for us. Just in few words, new century, COVID era, creating a lot of challenges. We are meeting a lot of challenges, you see, and like Russian journalism, Indian journalism itself. And for us, it's very interesting, you see, to look in the eyes of the future of our journalism in India, in Latin America, in Europe, in Russia itself. And according to their question, understand where we are going, how we are answering to these challenges. So it helps us to see at the events under different angles. Let me introduce the best of the best, our speakers from Moscow. Really, friends, they are the best of the best. So again, ladies first, Tatiana Kukhareva, she's deputy head, Sputnik News website and radio. By the way, Tatiana, she is, students, professors, that by education, she's nuclear physics. She graduated university with profession nuclear physics. But she, since her youth, teenage, she showed keen interest in journalism, and journalism becomes her profession. And honestly speaking, she is highly professional. So she started with RT channel. Then she was creating the RT channel in website in France. She produced special coverage for a lot of important events all over the world. And since 2017, she was invited to head all European and American editions of Sputnik in Moscow. And now she is my boss in Moscow, friends. And Vasily Pushkov, Vasily, my very old and good friend. By the way, Vasily graduated Moscow State University, and his profession is East countries. She fluently speaks not only English, but Japanese, because he was the head of our representative office in Japan itself. But Vasily, he is professional with a big letter, because due to him, our Sputnik News Agency has a lot of contacts all over the world. Vasily, the head of Directorate of International Cooperation. Due to him, we signed agreements with media all over the world, with universities, and he put his bricks in what creating this big building of mutual relations and in India itself. Behind the curtain, my dear friend Ася Samoilova, because with her we are organizing this SputnikPro, and my greetings to the Dr. Vishal Sahai, and from my part to Rashpal Dasgotra, my assistants. So, too much, but this is the first time we need to get acquainted, yes, to be acquainted to each other. So friends, today's lecture, Modern Media World, Main Trends and Tendencies. After this workshop, you are welcome, and we even insist to ask questions. You can ask questions in our chat, and I would just read these questions to our speakers. So, Tatiana, Vasily, I think we can start.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Dycheva. Thank you so much, everybody. It's a great pleasure for us to do this thing today. And well, I'm always thankful. This is not an advertisement, but I'm always greatly thankful to the actual people who invented Zoom, because basically since COVID started, I was a little bit on the fence whether I would have had my job still intact the next day, because without actually communicating with international partners, friends, and colleagues, well, basically, I didn't know what to do at that point. But thanks to Zoom, I still can keep my job by doing this. So I hope you are not disappointed. Like Mrs. Dycheva mentioned, I think since COVID began, and I don't know the reason for that, but I'm just telling you the fact that since COVID began, India, as a country, Indian companies, Indian universities, for some reason, have become our main partners, our main audience, our main co-workers. So basically, it's prime direction to work today. We've done this thing, we've done these lectures for Indian students dozens of times now. So I'm asking the students, Mrs. Dycheva has already mentioned that there's a chat room in the Zoom, the chat room function, and I encourage everybody to not only ask questions, don't treat it as a question. Actually, there's no problem. We can do this, we can do it the hard way, we can do it like a regular lecture, but I still remember, though I am old right now, I still remember what it's like to be a student, and basically I suspect that you don't have much interest in watching two much older people, sorry, Tatiana, telling you about the current state of profession. You have your own professors who can do that much better than we can. But you can steer the conversation. You can just ask just not questions, but you can just throw in a topic like, for example, and there are no limitations today. Just to start you off, I can tell you that during our last session with our Indian students, by the time the lecture already was closer to the end, they actually started asking us the interesting question, like, for example, what it's like to be the face of the Kremlin propaganda machine, which is great. So I just encourage you, I will not put words in your mouths, but I encourage you to start with that today. I will be more than happy to tell you everything we know and what we think on the subject. And before that, one Indian student asked me what it's like to, how can I stand working with the Chinese? So again, like, I'm just telling you that there are no limitations. You can just throw in anything you like. And Mrs. Dycheva already mentioned that we are the largest media group in Russia, and I just want to point out and underline that we are a state-funded media group, and like I said, we are a state-funded media group. Again, India and Russia have very different media cultures. So I have many friends and colleagues from the Indian media companies, and I perfectly am aware of the fact that in Indian media culture, for the media company to be successful, it absolutely, positively has to be a privately owned one. So that's fine with us. In Russia, it's a bit different. The situation is a bit different, and if you want, we can talk about that, because I actually have very strong feelings on the subject, and it was my, as soon as I discovered a little bit about the state of the media industry, as soon as I personally, being a young man myself, it was a very long time ago, but at the time, I discovered a little bit about the media, about how the information market worked, about who are the main players, and basically what are the rules of the media world, and I made a conscious, coherent choice to work for a state-funded media company. And if you want, I can totally, I think I can totally defend my position to you. I would be more than delighted too. So that's just one of the topics. Another one is, of course, the international cooperation and what's the need for that. Again, in this case, in this regard, Indian media companies are I would describe them, not passive, but there are countries where the main media companies are much more active. They're actively pursuing being involved in some media exchanges around the world. Indian media market is a little bit Well, it's oriented inside of India. They're much more concerned with what is happening inside the country. They're not really looking to expand, and they're not really looking to cover much ground outside of India, which is again very interesting.
It's a big country.
India is a big country. I understand, of course, that they, like I said, they have a reason for that. I mean, India at this point, India is what, 10 times the size of Russia population-wise. So yeah, I understand. You have your journalists. They have something to report on. I'm guessing, yeah, they have a lot of work without ever leaving even the city they're in. So again, understandable. But we are trying to build an international community of journalists here for one simple reason, and this will be the main topic of discussion today. This is a topic where Tatiana and myself, we do not differ so much in terms of the substance, but we differ very much in terms of form, because my position is that the whole state of the media industry and journalistic profession around the world is in complete crisis. My position is that the whole image of journalism is slowly but gradually dying. Well, Tatiana agrees with it in a way that it's dying, but it's evolving. But I'm very pessimistic, and she, for some reason, is optimistic at this point. So this is where she and I differ. But still, we have so many problems as journalists, and I understand that the majority of you guys are looking to become journalists, which is completely, again, understandable for Tatiana and very difficult to understand for myself. But you should know that the amount of problems that the modern journalist faces, it just multiplies every cycle. I mean, from the traditional approach to the workings of a media company completely dying out, to basically large media companies having to compete with a single blogger who can be 22 years old and living outside his mother's basement, but he can actually... Well,
probably he's already, if he's competing with a media company.
If he's competing, he's already rich. His mother
yard,
might be living in his basement. But still, he can have the audience twice of that as large established media company, to the complete lack and basically disappearance of trust, of public trust towards the large established media companies, to the journalists being blamed, whether they are actually involved or not, or completely innocent, but still they're being blamed for public's mistrust or just misguiding the public. The amount of problems is huge, and today's journalist, he not only has to be just a professional in journalistic sense of the word. He should be able to be, again, a professional photo correspondent. He should be a professional blogger. He should be a professional, even IT guy at one point or another. He should be a professional advertising guy. So again, for a journalist to compete, he has to be just not only jack of all trades, master of none. He should be master of all the trades. He should know everything, know everybody, be everywhere. Oh yeah, and one last thing, he will never be paid enough. So that you should again just check that point for you, because we were just discussing our salary right before this thing started. We were discussing our own salaries. So That's the state of profession as I see it, well, I'm going to give a chance to Tatiana to just tell me how wrong I am and present her view, and just tell us a little bit about how the largest media company in Russia works outside of Russia. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, well, I was just jumping in with one quick question. Which year are the students in?
Mrs. Dycheva, Professor.
Oksana, this is not first year student.
That's good, because I was...
Because we have around 100, so for their first year and second year. Yes, Professor Saxena?
Yes, sir.
Because we have 100 students, you see, so all of them just here.
I was just, I'm just asking because this is such a nice advertising. If you're in your first year and then you get a person from, from Moscow who's been in the profession for, 18 years, you said? 18 years. And he's like, well, look, guys, just don't do it. And you're like, oh, wow, but I've already entered university. So, yeah, I just wanted to first and foremost, obviously, say that I really appreciate this, this opportunity to be here, to talk to you. It's a great honor, and Olga knows just how much I love India. And, I was just literally came back from holiday. I was just outside of India, and a little teeny tiny island, called Sri Lanka. And, very close, yet so far away. I was waving. Olga Vladimirovna, I hope you saw me waving from Sri Lanka to you. And we have, it's a beautiful day right now in Moscow. And I just think that we might make it even more beautiful. So, the profession. We're here to talk about new media and, the trends and the tendencies, the difficulties. Where I do draw a line is that, as Vasily mentioned, we obviously do agree about the fact that the profession itself is in sort of a crisis. However, it's a matter of perspective, obviously. I find it that it is in times of crisis that we get the biggest opportunity of growth and the biggest opportunity to change something, to change the profession, to evolve. And this is, in my view, exactly where we are right now as journalists. We're growing and we're evolving at an incredible pace right now. The big elephant in the room that needs to be addressed first and foremost, if we're talking about journalism in 2022, it's 2022. It's amazing. I still can't believe it. I think, it was just 2021 and it was just 2019 where we were traveling. I'm a little bit excited because this trip that I took was the first real trip that I took in 2 years. Everything before that was basically like traveling around our country. Which is still traveling, but it's kind of a very different thing. So I, for myself, was very lost, at a complete loss to understand where we've lost 2 years. And I think that one of the, it was a taxing time, especially with I know we had different timetables, we had different schedules in terms of lockdowns and restrictions between Moscow and India. Moscow, as you very well know, locked down very early. We went on first and our only lockdown, complete lockdown, in March 2020. Whereas in India, it was still not the case. and you guys had a very different situation. And this was the first time when, you know, when journalism, all of journalism, and we're talking about every single part of the journalistic profession, was facing a completely different reality. We literally woke up in a new reality where everything had to change, and it had to change like this. Obviously, since I now know that we do have first-year students, and unfortunately the chat, and I'm going to reiterate that, guys, please ask the questions, any questions you have, please ask them, because first of all, there's a difference in the conceptions, in understanding different things, and the more questions you ask, the more we're going to be able to explain some things, and the more information, useful information, you're going to carry out of this discussion. So this was, we were facing, again, every single journalist, at least in Russia, woke up to a completely different reality. And I personally work a lot with Europe, because I am in charge of, well, not only the hub that we have in New Delhi, but also of all of the websites that are done in, so to speak, European languages. So that would be every website around Europe and, both Americas as well. And, psychological and human part of it aside, technologically, the lockdowns pushed the industry, and it was a massive push. I remember when I first decided to be a journalist, I was very actually old for that decision. I know that I can assume that the majority of the people that have joined our discussion are somewhere around 20-ish. And I actually decided to kind of, come back full on to the profession when I was 27. I mean, in Russia, that's like, you're supposed to already be like an established journalist by that age. It's very, very late to enter a profession. And I came on, I joined RT, I joined the newsroom. For me, at that point, to think that we're going to be able to do live broadcasts from our houses, not from the studio, but from your home, and that this is going to be broadcast to the entire audience that you have, it would have been preposterous. That the idea, the fact that, that you didn't need a studio, you didn't need all of that incredible equipment. You would need your laptop, a good internet connection, good lighting. For some people, especially, the older you get, the better the lighting you need. Where we have people taking our pictures right here, right now, so I'm going to suffer with that later. We have very bad lighting out here, so the pictures are going to be terrible. But well, it was a crazy idea. I mean, if you'd have told somebody this at that time, they would have probably laughed in your face. It's like, I mean, television is television for a reason, and the same kind of push. It happened to everybody. It happened to the radio. People started doing radio broadcasts from their homes, and I'm not talking about podcasts. I'm talking about actual radio programs, because people could not go to the office. So we had to adapt. In any single newsroom on the face of the planet, some people were able to stay at the office, but the majority of people went to work remotely, and that required an immense evolution in terms of how we see the profession in general, in terms of how we see the technical equipment that is necessary to do that job. so that was that, you know, and we're still, I think, we're still kind of working off of that momentum, and we're still reevaluating, because, you know, the next big push happened when you came out of this confinement, out of those restrictions, and back into the newsrooms. And then the world was, it was kind of the same, but it was completely changed, because that understanding of the new reality that you live in, the new technical necessities, the new understanding of how you can do this job, especially if we're talking about internet journalism, because the internet, it was much freer to begin with, but after the lockdowns, there were literally no limits. A lot of the people understood that to be able to do this job, you don't need to be at the office at all. You just need to be, you know, you need a great deal of discipline, but you can do it from any place on earth. And that's, you know, that's the extra bit of freedom that was given to us by this pandemic. And it pushed the already pretty evolved internet journalistic world into a new understanding, a new era, and I think that we're gonna still be seeing the results of that push for a couple of years at least to come. So let's talk about let's go back to the basics. The subject of this lecture, discussion panel is new media. I can tell you one thing. The one thing that I hate as previously mentioned, as a nuclear physicist by degree, is I hate labels. Very, very understandable personally, because, you know, if you look at my diploma, I was supposed to be doing nuclear bombs, but no. That never happened. I blow up the world with my words, I guess, if we want to look at it poetically. So why do I dislike labels in journalism? Because for the most part, they work against us. For instance, if we take the words new media, on paper, and I'm sure that this part you all know, on paper, if we talk about new media versus traditional media, we're talking about traditional media would be television, radio, and newspapers, whereas the new media would be literally everything and anything connected to the internet. What's wrong with this identification, you know, this separation, this distinction? Let's take newspapers, for example, and I'm going to be referencing British media. Forgive me for this. The only reason that I'm going to be referencing British media is that those are examples that are equally familiar for us here and for you guys in India. The majority of British press, print press, we're talking about The Guardian, The Independent, literally every single big newspaper at one point went online. So where does this line lie? You know, those are very traditional news media outlets that did the work, evolved with the times, and went online and kind of shifted from the traditional pile into the new media pile. Did that change the modus vivendi inside those outlets? Not quite, because they're still, you know, kind of traditional media outlets. They carry the tradition from the back in the days where they were published, I don't know, once a week, because you would, in order to transfer the news, you'd have to send a piece of paper with a person riding a horse, because there were no other ways to transfer information. I'm obviously exaggerating, but still. If we take radio, obviously, yes, there is the traditional radio that we all know, love, that the Queen wrote a song about. Still, there's this part of radio, and then there's internet radio, and then there are podcasts, which are kind of still, it's kind of a spin-off of radio programs. And a lot of radio programs are now being cut out of the broadcast and put online as podcasts. So for me, as a person who's started in television, then shifted online, and done a lot of, literally a little bit of everything. For me, I think that I find those distinctions, that kind of, strict division between new and traditional, to be very old school as a point of view. I think that all of the formats intertwine to a degree that, you can't really distinguish between the two, fully separate them from one another. We live in a symbiosis, and that symbiosis is the beauty of the profession as well. However, if we talk about that, that moment of transition, when we discovered internet, the first kind of understanding of the fact that that news can travel, there's a saying, news travels fast. Well, then when internet appeared, we understood just how fast the news can actually travel. The amount of freedom that gave journalists was unparalleled, actually. And then the next big step, the one that Vasily actually references as one of the pillars of the crisis that we're in, if I'm not mistaken, I think that would be the appearance of social networks. For one very simple reason. As soon as social networks appeared, the standards and the reality of journalists was once again completely rocked, shaken to the core, because when Twitter appeared, it suddenly became very obvious that any person with a simple smartphone, can become a journalist. Any person will, even with a very, very old version of a smartphone, could become a journalist. The way the news functioned before that is that, obviously, again, in a theoretical perfect world, you have news agencies, which is, we are a part of the media group. And another part of that same media group is a news agency, one of the largest in Russia, the oldest in Russia, the most respectful in Russia. So that news agency has journalists in every single, well, not every single, but in the majority of the places that, that are deemed important in the field, so to speak. And when something happened back in the days, you would have to send that journalist to go to that place where something happened, to see it, to photograph it, then to send it back, and that's how news were made. Now, today, you don't actually need that. And it's both a blessing and a curse. Because on one hand, you have people anywhere, be that in India, in Somalia, in Washington, anywhere, or in a small French village in the south of France. And if something should happen, anything, be that an extremely big wave, be that an earthquake, be that a terror attack, be that somebody going mad and creating a hostage situation, then anything you need, everything you need to report that bit of news is somebody next to that place or next to that event, next to that natural disaster with a smartphone who is able and willing to film it or to make pictures and to tweet or to make a Facebook post about it. And then you find that bit of information, and there, once you've verified the source, you have your news. So that does cut the time, you know, that you would have to spend on sending your person to that place, filming that, then transferring it back. It does shorten it immensely. However, the beauty of social networks and the beauty of the human nature, let's call it that way, is that people are lazy. We all are. I mean, come on. I believe that in the beginning of the pandemic, I actually made it a rule to not turn off my Zoom camera, because I knew that once I turn off that Zoom camera for editorial meetings, I'm literally gonna doing all of the rest of the meetings in my pajamas, not even brushing my hair. Because why? Because, like, I mean, come on, why do it if you can not do it? When it comes to social networks, the most crucial, I can't stress that enough, point is verifying your information. And if you work online for, it's even that's even arguable. I mean, for me, it was one thing. I was very much conscious at the time when social networks were created. I still remember when they were non-existent, and when to text somebody, for instance, I had friends in different countries. I think my first love was in Paris, and I was in Moscow, and we had to write letters to one another. And there was no Facebook. You couldn't just text somebody. You had to write emails. And we would exchange very, very lengthy emails, 3 or 4 per day. But I mean, and right now, I mean, the people, the students, God bless your generation. You were born with those. You don't even know. I mean, and I know it because we have the same age group of students coming here to us in Moscow, and then you tell them, well, you know, guys, before Facebook, and they were like, before Facebook? How is that even possible? It's like, that's a very it's a very weird thought. You know, I still get that when I talk to my parents sometimes, and they say, you know, it's about some sort of building that I grew up with in Moscow. And they were like, well, I remember that wasn't there. I was like, that was not there? Really? Seriously? Is that even possible? I can't even imagine that. And so obviously it's a very different perception of social networks as a phenomenon. But for the people who still remember the blissful time when Facebook was still probably being concocted somewhere in a very small room in a dorm, you know, in an American university, it's a very logical concept. We were brought up with that, you know, with a double verification, double confirmation rule. I know that your professors know what I'm talking about, that double confirmation of every breaking news that you can only break if you find 2 independent sources that confirm that that breaking news. There are lovely, adorable movies, US movies that you can actually watch, and they kind of, you know, they show you that you know, that backstory of the news world. The beauty of any social network is that if you're willing to spend the time to understand how it works, if you don't take it for granted, which a lot of you guys do because, again, you literally grew up with a smartphone in your hand, and that's not good, it's not bad, it's just the reality. We didn't have that. It gives you all of the tools that you need to be able to verify every single piece of information that is posted there. There's metadata, there's the digital footprint. If you're willing to do the work, and it's not even that much work, to understand how the digital reality operates, there's always a trace, there's always the lead that you can follow, the breadcrumbs that you can follow and understand very quickly, might I say, how, when that photo was taken, or whether the person has concealed all of that data, which by definition is not really good. You know, if you're a journalist, you become, at one point, you lose all sense of, hope for the humanity, and you understand that if a person's hiding something, it's never a good thing, it never means that, that you can trust the information that person's putting out. So Vasily tells me there's a lot of questions.
Yes, we know that actually students today were very quick to respond and gave us a lot of questions. Is that true, Mrs. Dycheva?
This is actually...
we are working with this SputnikPro with other universities for several years, but for the first time, I see such cascade, you see, of questions. And no, I was telling you that this university is very, very really well known, very prominent, and this team, I'm very sorry I didn't give what I told you that I was nervous. I not give you word to represent, to make presentation of your university. But after this question, certainly the floor all would be yours, and you can tell us. Friends, really, I try to combine all the questions. Muskan Baweja, Ria Arya, Josh George, Samhavi Shri. So such interesting, such beautiful, you see, questions. Friends, I try to combine some of them. You see, with one here I was listening to Tatiana, with other I was just combining these questions. So, my dear speakers, so let's first group of questions about Indian and Russian media. So first one, what are major difference between Russia and Indian media? What you can tell us? What differences? Tatiana, you have visited India several times, and you are fond of India. You are very well informed what is going here. What are major differences between Russian and Indian media?
It's a very good question. I'm actually right now very happy that I am far away and that I can answer that question and then go back to my office and not be thrown at, I don't know, tomatoes, rotten eggs, anything. Guys, the main difference between the Russian and Indian media is the speed. But again, we're talking about very, let me clarify one thing, and it's a very important thing, is that for me, yes, I am Russian. Yes, I do sometimes read media in Russian, but for the past 10 years, I've been working in English and French. And some other European languages. I didn't have any choice in the matter, but it was my conscious decision to come to work for an international media outlet for, well, 2 now, at least. And I'm talking primarily about the media outlets that operate in English. For reasons unknown to me for this moment, I can't quite put a finger on it. I don't know Hindi. Still. It's somewhere on the list of the languages that I hope to one day master. But there are a couple of other languages in front of it for some reason. You know, I still have to polish out my German and my Italian and then Hebrew and then maybe Hindi. So if we're talking about English language, and that has a lot to do with the fact that India, as Vasily has already said, it's a very kind of self-centered market because the country is so big and there are so many, even the country itself, it's kind of a lot like Russia in that way, in terms of, you know, we have a lot of different regions and they're completely, you know, if you go from one region to another, those are completely 2 different worlds, you know, and so the internal market is just so big that it's a completely kind of unique ecosystem. And that is the biggest difference is that the international media that operate in Russia, there are literally just 2 of them, RT and Sputnik. We were forced on the English-speaking markets in the UK and the US from the get-go. The thing about those 2 markets is that speed is the thing. And it was the same, I faced the same phenomenon when I started working in French with the French news outlets, and then when I started working in German, it was the same story. The average speed of breaking something, of breaking news, it takes twice longer for French outlets to break something than it takes the Brits. And this is, again, that's one of the reasons that I referenced, and I told you that I'm going to be referencing UK media outlets, is that because they're faster. They are still that golden standard of speed and accuracy that exists to this day. You know, the American media are a very different market for a lot of reasons, and we can get into that if you want to talk about this. But again, the English language media sphere is just so damn fast. You snooze, you lose. That's it. And I find this to be the biggest difference between the 2, the speed.
No, I think
If I may interject, Tatiana is looking at it more from a professional, purely journalistic standpoint. I view it from a more administrative point of view, and I would say that the main difference is actually in the thing that I've mentioned at the start of today's discussion. Indian media market is more often than not privately owned. Russia is a country that well, it's a very long story, but to put it in just very brief terms. So you understand that there was a Soviet Union, and basically everything every organization, every company was owned, funded, and controlled by the government. Well, according to the Soviet constitution, it was by the people, but, well, you understand, it was actually by the government. So Russia, after the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia tried to move from the, Soviet economy to a more Western economy, which was devastating to the economy of the country. Basically, we lost well, at least half of what we were during the 90s. So then the whole change was that was rapidly developing was put a little bit on hold and slowed down, let's call it. And it turned out that well, I'm not an economist, but purely from a psychological point of view, it turned out that a lot of the companies again started to show signs of development only when they were returned under either state control or state funding or whatever. That was something that the country was used to. That was the system that the whole country was built around, and that was psychologically for people easier to digest. So basically, in Russia, a lot of major companies, not only in media, a lot of major companies are actually state companies. That's how we operate. So, in terms of media market, Indian companies, like I said, they're not owned by the state. They are owned by private citizens, private companies, corporation. So in India, media business is just that. It's a business. So people are in it for the business part of it. And as businesses, they well, like, by laws of nature, they have to make money. It's a paramount thing for them because otherwise they will not be able to exist. Because at the end of the day, okay, all is well. The journalistic profession is what saves us. It what helps develop human rights and sustain democracy. We all understand that. But at the end of the day, if you have no money to pay your correspondents, you have no correspondents. If you have no money to pay your editors, you have no editors. And your stockholders, shareholders, owners, CEOs, they want the revenue. They want you to show them how you make money. So from this point, for an Indian media company, it's of paramount importance to be a sustainable business, which means that well, there are a lot of smaller conditions, and it differs from country to country. But basically, I'm oversimplifying it just for the record. But your audience is your lifeblood, and unlike this was in the previous century, basically you don't really care anymore, especially if you're online. You don't really care anymore about the demographics of your audience. You're looking at the counter. You have 10,000, you have 100,000, you have 1 million views. That's the measure of success, because you show those figures, you show those numbers to advertisers, and they give you money for advertising. And that's the mainstream of revenue for a modern media company, because again, Tatiana mentioned the British companies. You know that they're actually the British. They were trying very hard. They were one amongst the first who were trying very hard to find out how to make money as media companies in the 21st century. So we had the subscription model. We have the paywall. I'm sure you've heard about those. Whatever. You're asking for donations from the viewers. Asking for donations from non-governmental or
You have integrated advertising as well.
Yeah. Let's mention that a little bit later on. And but basically, at the end of the day, those are not the numbers. I mean, money-wise, finance-wise, those are not the numbers that are able to sustain a large media companies, because that's another truth. Though we stopped producing print, though we stopped producing actually something physical as media companies, it became a very expensive business to sustain, because the tech behind the modern media, all those servers and the people who operate them, they cost an astronomical amount of money, and you have to pay somehow for that. So basically, advertising is still your only way to victory, and advertisers, they want you to show them numbers. What is the size of your audience, and this is a very, very dark alleyway, because we all want to be professional, high-level journalists covering the most difficult, the most controversial topics, putting ourselves inside the darkest corners of human psyche. But what's the point of that if nobody wants to read about that? I mean, what's the point? You can be the smartest journalist in the solar system, writing about the stuff that only gods understand. And so where will that put you?
And that's your problem, because only gods will
Yeah,
want to read about it.
yeah. So your audience is just the number of gods that there are there. So of course, no, there is for a company, there is some reason to do that, because you will get rewards, you'll get prizes. I mean, Pulitzer is still something that every media company is dreaming about, but that's not something that brings.
That's where you're wrong. I think that a Pulitzer is everything that certain writers dream about.
Writers,
But not
writers.
companies. Companies don't care about that. Companies, the only thing that they get for instance, hiring a Pulitzer holding journalist is that they're going to have to pay him a lot of money, which is
but established companies, they can put that as a PR act. So from the PR point of view, that's a good thing if you can find the money to pay the guy with the prize. That's for sure. Yes, you're right. So at the end of the day, you can have the smartest journalist in your newsroom, but nobody reads about that because people are apathetic. And they'd rather start their day. Well, let's just talk about the morning. I mean, some people start their day by reading about the conflict in Syria, but some people, and the majority of them, they want something light, something funny, maybe a picture of a dog or a pretty lady. I mean, that's just something people want. You cannot tell people what to want. That's just something that they need. So they will go to the website that will give them what they need. And your smart journalists, they just can have an indefinite smoking break if they're so concerned. So that's the big problem. Again, I'm oversimplifying, but that's the nature of business. I mean, that's the natural law of business. So in Russia, from this point again, that's what I started with. That's why I chose to work for a state-funded company, because that's something that we, for example, we don't have to worry about that. Well, that's not necessarily true, but because, again, we are still, though state-funded, we're still a company, and state wants us to be a profitable company, so we are actually expected to make money to sustain ourselves, but still, we're not going to be out of our jobs after a bad month. So that's the good thing. Of course, there's the other side of the coin, and we'll talk about that later. I know that there are questions on that, so that's something that, please.
Vasily, so just the question connected to the previous one. Okay, so as we understand, so Indian media, private companies, were state companies. What about journalist rights and freedoms?
Olga, linked to this, I want to raise a point to Vasily. You refer to the media in the Soviet Union, the USSR till 1991, and the changes that occurred after that. And you said that now the Soviet media, I mean, the Russian media is more like on the Western media. So can you underline the major difference between the Soviet media, which was before 1991, and the media which has grown after 1991, not only in terms of the structure of the companies or the size of the company or the state funded or the privately funded, but also in terms of the content and in terms of the press of freedom and in terms of media ethics.
Thank you, Professor. So you combine several questions, yes, in one. Vasily, please.
Yeah. So, once again, could you repeat the last part, please? I didn't get the last part.
Yeah, I said that this comparison between the Soviet media and the Russian media, and not only in terms of the type of the companies or the size of the companies, or whether it's a state-owned or the corporate-owned, but then also in terms of the difference that you find in terms of content and in terms of ethics. And the press freedom also,
yeah,
and the press freedom also.
I think that's a very, very simple, there's a very simple answer to the question. The difference is the same as is between the Soviet Union and Russia. Russia is a democratic country. So there you have it. It's the same difference in content. I think we've literally said that at every single lecture, I think, because, you know, and it's a very kind of slightly upsetting misconception. I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm just saying that, you know, it's still, that's one of the prejudices that exists, is that Russian media, Russian state media are very similar to the Soviet media, which they're not. I mean, I wish sometimes that there were that little phone, probably would have been red, that I would get a ring on, and I know Vasily does as well, and there would be the president telling me what to do. It would make my life so much easier if I did have that phone and that direct line to the Kremlin. If they're listening, I'm waiting. Like I'd have it installed in my office any day now. Sadly, that's not the case, and it's just very simple. There was Soviet Union. We all know about it. We've all studied the history. It hasn't been around for 30 years this year. 31, yes. And the difference is very simple. Russia is a democratic state with a democratically elected president, and a lot of the freedoms that were unimaginable in the Soviet Union at one point. And our state media are state media because we're funded from the budget. It's I'd call it, I love that expression, I'd call it public service, not state funded. You know, it makes all the difference. Us as journalists, we know the difference, you know. Public service media. We serve the public, and the public pays us for it. Does not mean that we're completely controlled. This is why I don't like the state-funded notion, because state-funded, there's a very little step from state-funded to state-controlled. Not the case.
Yeah, but in India, I mean, whether we talk about the state media or whether we talk about the private media, but somewhere the media is extremely pro-establishment. So there is a press freedom, but the media is largely pro-establishment. Is it the same case in Russia?
Here we have to really pinpoint what establishment is in India and what establishment is in Russia, because those are two, well, quite different things. So again, Russia is a much more okay, Russian politics are much less interesting than Indian politics. I mean, you can really become an expert on Russian politics inside the world.
It is because of the weather. It's just so cold.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yes. So basically, you can become an expert on Russian politics. Being an Indian, you can become an expert on Russian politics inside a 5-day week. But for a Russian to become an expert on who pays the bills, who is under whom in India. You have to basically, well, study for a year or two and study inside in India. So these are notions. I mean, this deserves like a completely different like discussion in itself, a long one actually. But for a journalist, it's a much simpler thing. Just to reiterate what Tatiana said, that was actually my point, because without state funding, and again, I'm and unlike you, I'm protecting the term state funding. There would be no us, because like I said, for a company, for international media company, we operate in 32 languages. We have correspondents in 100 cities around the world. We have editorial hubs in major capitals around the world. There is not a private company that will fund an operation like that. No private guy is going to give his money for an operation like that. Russia needed a huge media company. All the others did. We did not have one. The state decided that Russia needed one after the collapse of the Soviet Union and after the smoke of the 90s cleared away. So the state funded the creation of the company of this size. It would not have been possible without the funding from the state, like I said. Then moving on to again the establishment and the red phone. Again, to save the time, let's really put it in much simpler perspective. Again, for you guys as future journalists, you will face, and I think the majority of you will face, disappointment as soon as you graduate from the university and get hired by a company. And your disappointment will come from the fact that you, being a professional, being well-educated, very smart, probably good-looking person, entering a new company and actually having to do what you are told. You will have a boss, and more importantly, you will have an editor. And even more importantly, your company will have an editorial policy. And that editorial policy will be the alpha and the omega of what you will be able to cover as a journalist. That will put those frames on your work. We have an editorial policy. New York Times has an editorial policy. The Hindu has an editorial policy. You understand that. Every single company has an editorial policy. That editorial policy is what makes a media company unique. Let's call it that. Again, we are all grown-ups here. We're not using the words good or bad. Right? Let's forget about those words. Those are just the facts of life. So without, again, moving into on the political side of the question, the financial side of the question, for you to be happy as a journalist, because, well, you're a journalist second. You're a human being first with your system of values, notions on how the things should be done in this world. So in order for you to be happy, you should just, it's very simple, you should just choose the job, the company, that which editorial policy coincides with your system of values, and that's basically it. That's the end of that. Again, without mentioning the words good or bad. So let's Mrs. Dycheva, can you give one more question for us? Then
yes.
I will leave Tatiana.
I know that yes, Vasily, I know that you must. 3 o'clock Indian time that you must leave because you have some urgent meeting. But okay, which rights we have in Russian media, the journalist, which rights and how his rights are protected, because it's connected, it seems to me, with what you have told us before. Okay, we are state, we are government, but okay,
Sadly, we're
if-
not government. I wish we were the government.
Okay, so
What government this
What
country?
that I'm asking, okay, the freedom of journalists, the freedom of rights, and how these rights are protected if journalists some look
okay,
not
no.
straight.
Actually, well, I'm personally am a bit skeptical on the whole rights thing, because basically at this point every company has rights. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to insult anybody anywhere, but you know that North Korea has a constitution and there are rights in it. So I mean, let's just not concentrate on the rights part
You
of.
have the rights until you throw out the picture of Kim.
Yeah. No. Right.
You throw that into garbage and then you have no rights.
Again, yeah.
It's just, that's a very simple caveat.
There are laws. Okay, so just to answer the question,
That's the law. You can't throw
there
away
are
the picture.
laws protecting the journalistic freedoms. There are laws, of course, protecting the what do you call that? Freedom of speech. I mean, they're basically the same right now. If you start comparing from country to country, they're basically the same in any part of the world. But the sad thing is that I know what you're actually asking, but the sad thing is, that again, editorial policy of the media company trumps all other rights in any country of the world. Because again, you should, before you start working as a journalist, you should understand that you should really feel that you will be getting a salary. You will be getting bonuses, that money from people for your work, like everybody else in this world. And again, like I always say, I'm 41 years old. I've traveled to more than 50 countries around the world. I've yet to meet.
Stop bragging.
I'm not bragging. It's a sad truth. I rarely see my family anymore. The sad truth is that I've yet to meet a single person who likes to pay money for something that he doesn't like. So that's the ultimate truth of life. Somebody is going to pay you, and he or she will pay you to do something.
You're scaring people. I think you're scaring people.
Tell me I'm wrong. Okay, I'm scaring. Tell me that I'm wrong.
I wouldn't say that you're wrong per se. I think that this is again, that's a very simple thing that nobody actually talks about in general. The way the media, and we're talking about the media, the original, the OG media, newspapers, came to life. Every single newspaper, when it appeared, since, again, that was in that magical time when we didn't have social media, we didn't have the internet, nobody even thought of the internet, we didn't have radio, we didn't have television, we had nothing. The only source of kind of not information, but exchange of information were said newspapers. And every single newspaper was, even at that time, because you should understand, there was a time, and I know that's it's something that nobody would think about today, because again, why would you think about this, even as a concept? But in order to transfer information, that was even before telegraph. So you couldn't even give telegrams. You didn't have a phone. You needed to literally write something on a piece of paper, roll it into, or like fold it into an envelope and send it with somebody. Yeah, so it was a very different reality to what happens today. And the first newspapers were not about bringing you the news right now, right here, as we are today, because again, it was impossible. But they were a compilation of opinions, and they were always affiliated with a specific political party. It was a very specific thing. This is why, again, I'm referencing British media, because it's the easiest example there is. There were basically two political parties which had the media affiliated with them, which would publish writers that would give their opinions, give what we now call columns, opinions on everything that's happening. And you would buy a specific paper because you would follow a specific party, because you would want to read something that corresponds with your point of view.
I'm really sorry. I have to leave. I'm leaving you with Tatiana. She just moved to her favorite subject, bashing the British. So this is going to be fun for everyone involved. Please continue. This was lovely. I hope that we will soon do this again sometime. Thank you.
I don't know what he's talking about. I love British media. I was brought up on British media. So the thing is that this is the reason why everything that we do right now, it came to life. It was not about bringing you the news, it was bringing you the perspective of the news, which is what we now call editorial policy. But without it, it wouldn't even exist. It is the nature of the human brain that you don't want to just read. It's just, it's a very sad truth that we rarely discuss this. But again, I did not quite go to journalism school. So again, you have to forgive me for this. I know what they teach in journalism school in Russia, but we do rarely discuss this. This is the part of the history of journalism that you need to understand in order to be able to understand the profession better. Because, right now, and again, coming back to my point that I hate labels, and I hate labels for a very specific reason. The first label that I, as a journalist, had to battle against is independent media. And you know why I hate two labels I hate the most? It's independent media and it's fake news. Because both of them do not exist almost anywhere. Because both of them are highly mediatized and politicized labels used to fight a very political war. There is not a single independent media on the face of this planet. There never were. Because again, first of all, point A, all media were created as a representation of a certain point of view, and you would back in the days, before the telephone, before the telegram, you would actually buy a specific newspaper that would correspond to your point of view, because you would like to read, smarter men talk about smart things in politics. That was before clickbait, before Instagram, before, HuffPost and 10 top ways to feel better in 2022, that kind of articles. It was before all that. It was a purely political tool in order to maintain connection with your party's electorate, basically speaking, if you oversimplify. And the second of all, every single media exists, and in order for it to exist, somebody pays money for it. That's what Vasily was talking about. But again, even if you look at this a certain way, purely news without an editorial policy, A, it's extremely boring. It is extremely boring. B, nobody would want to read it. by definition, every single person on the face of this planet has an opinion on everything that happens around them. And if they say they don't, then they're lying to you. For instance, you know, we can take a lot of very flammable examples. The easiest one that I always take, because you know it's kind of, you know, close and far for both of our countries. Somebody blows up a bus stop in Afghanistan. The pure piece of news is just an explosion at a bus stop. The rest of it is context. And the way you choose your context shapes the way that your reader is going to read about it. Now, I'm not talking about doing news as opinionated pieces. That's wrong. That's bad journalism. That's not what we're doing here. So we're talking about balance, but we're talking about editorial policy. Every single media on the face of this planet was at one point created with an editorial policy. Again, if we're talking about British news, there's the BBC and there's the Guardian, for instance. You know, there's two pillars of, you know, stability in a journalistic world. The people reading the Guardian would not in their right mind dream of right-wing or even center right-wing positions on the face, on the front page of that publication. It's a left-wing media, as opposed to the BBC, and vice versa. So there you have it. It's a very simple fact. There is no such thing as independent news. There's good quality journalism, and then there's the lack of quality in journalism. These are the things that you're going to learn in school. The way to do every single bit of reporting. I wish, in a perfect world, we could do, say, hands-on, in-class, kind of master class, writing, taking one bit of information and giving it different angles. I think that's what you guys will at one point do in your school curriculum, to be able to understand how you can take one piece of information and shape it 10 different ways, literally at least 10. And this is what we do as journalists, all of them in the meantime remaining balanced and well written. But the one thing that you need to understand, and that I wish somebody told me that when I was your age and even younger, because I actually dreamt of journalism when I was still studying in high school, but I was one of the victims of that whole, you know, independent media trap. Because this is what basically anti-state propaganda, at least in our country, would feed you, saying that, look, you have state-run media, which are very highly censored, and then you have independent media. But that independent media is still paid for some people who find a specific political agenda favorable to them. So it's not really independent. But I had to live up to 27 years to be able to fully understand that thing, you know, because when you graduate high school, you're extremely naive. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. You're extremely naive. You have romantic ideas about, you know,
Changing, yes.
Journalism.
Changing the world.
Yeah, and changing the world. Yeah, exactly. It's just, but that's just not the way it is, you know, and you need to understand that it's not about, it's not as romantic, let's put it this way. It's not as romantic as it might seem at 18. But it is beautiful.
Challenging, exciting, and you know that you are serving, anyway, you are serving some idea. Tatiana, thank you very much. Dear students, without flattery to you, to your professors, what 2 years I'm in this program, moderating and even taking part in some discussion, I have never seen such interesting questions without any flattery, honestly, well formulated in good English, you see, for the first time. So really, bravo. A lot of questions unfortunately left outside, but it's not possible in this is our first meeting, and I pray that not last one, you see. And now, Tatiana, I think that let's give a word to Professor Saxena, to Dr. Bala. Please, a few words. Tell us about this university who are preparing some talented, you see, future journalists. And how do your impression about our function? No, anything you want to tell us? Yes.
Thank you, Olga. This is an institution which is by the name of Delhi Metropolitan Education, which is part of Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University. We run this bachelor's program, which is a Bachelor of Journalism and Mass Communication. And there are other academic programs as well in law, in business management, but particularly about this journalism and mass communication program. We have 500 plus students studying journalism and mass communication. And this is a semester system. So we have 6 semesters. Different papers are taken up in different semesters, right from journalism to advertising to public relations to print to radio to television to event management to video production to films. I mean, all the papers are being taught. But then somewhere down the line, there is a focus on the news media directly, indirectly, because in India, everything is news driven, everything is driven as to what is happening at the government level, at the election level. So that's somewhere in the forefront. So the issues like the freedom, the ethics, all these issues are always in the forefront. And obviously, as all the world over, this is happening regarding the digital media. Digital media is, I mean, we are teaching it in a big way. There are 3-4 papers on that only. And as far as the job opportunities are concerned in media in India, so obviously most of the jobs are there today, whether it's the mainstream media and the digital part of that, or the independent, or the complete digital media. So all that is happening in India. And regarding this session, this was really a very interesting session in the sense, and if I can tell you personally, my interest, I'm a person who have got university education when USSR was there. So ideologically also, I was close to that ideology. And I mean, I personally learned Russian for 2 years when I was in the university. So I love everything about Soviet Sangh, about Soviet Union, about Russia. And as a child, I have read all those magazines which were being taken out in the Soviet Union. And then all those magazines were available in India free of cost. So as a child, we were fond of reading all those magazines, and they were available in Indian languages, in Hindi as well, in English as well. So we used to read all that. So that is, I mean, one important area in which I wanted to put across. So, and obviously there are some very interesting things which Tatiana put to the forth. Like I myself teach mainly the media laws, on the ethics, and my specialization is Indian Constitution. I've studied it as a journalism student. I've studied it as a political science student. I've studied it as a law student. So I understand as to what is happening in media, whether we call it the state-owned media, and one term which was brought to the focus is the public service. In India also, there is a whole concept of public service, particularly in the broadcasting sector, and there are radio organizations like All India Radio and television organizations like Doordarshan, which are under the public broadcasting system. But as I want to make a mention, and I'm grateful to Tatiana that she gave a completely different line of thinking, wherein I have also started thinking whether actually independent media exists or not. Because earlier I was of the view that we use the term independent media, the media which is independent of the government control. But if it is independent of the government control, that somebody else is controlling it. So that way, there's a completely different line of thought that Tatiana, you have given to us to ponder on. I'm thankful to Tatiana. I'm thankful to Vasily and Olga also to bring this session to us.
Okay, thank you very much. We have really 1 minute. Thank you, Professor Saxena. Dr. Sushmita, 1 minute. Unfortunately, 1 minute, please. It's because it's not because of us, but please, what you can tell. I am thinking and looking forward for future. Yes, Dr. Saxena.
Yeah. Thank you, Sputnik, for launching this SputnikPro project for spreading awareness about media-related issues around the world. I, Sushmita. Olga, head of a Sputnik hub in New Delhi. Pushkov, director of international cooperation, Sputnik. And Tatiana, deputy head of Sputnik. Today we discuss modern media world, main trends and tendencies. And I am happy to note that varied and diverse views presented here. And whether journalism spirit is evolving or dying. He also discussed the change that we all are witnessing, content generation by individual content generators versus big size companies. Tatiana also discussed the impact of digital on the present day journalism. She said that even the traditional print, radio, and TV media organizations are undergoing in the wake of digital technology, and this is happening all across the globe. Yes, she also referred to social media and its impact on the mainstream news media. I'm happy to note my students asked a lot of questions, wide-ranging questions, and professionals from Russia specified their quench for thirst. Thank you.
Okay,
thanks to everybody for making this session a success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you. See you. Thank you all. Tatiana, Professor Sushmita, Professor Saxena, all friends. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you next time. See you in the... Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.